Eric Beck and I have been friends for, I don't know, 20 years or something like that. When I met him, we were both speaking at a conference in California, and he stood up and boy, he knocked it out of the park. I was so impressed with him. And, you know, he was 20 years younger than he is now, and he's learned so much more since then. But he's a very interesting guy, in my view. He's like a Renaissance man. It's like there's nothing he doesn't seem to be able to do. I mean, he's the kind of guy that can go in the wilderness and start a fire by rubbing his toes together or something. I don't know how he does it, but without matches is my point. He's a wilderness expert. He was a military guy. He was a musician. He performed at the Kennedy Center and Hollywood, whatever it was, you know, as a musician, you know, decades ago. Very accomplished in his musical skills. He then he got a job at the end of the century in 1999 with Michael Gerber, who was probably one of the best-selling business authors of all time. He wrote the book E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited. And he got hired to learn their system and learn to train. And he ultimately became the international director of training worldwide for E-Myth. He learned so much there. And then I said this last night, but it's so true. Eric is the kind of guy, he reminds me when I think of him as those kind of romanticized movies from, they're showing like a Western in the United States, and they're showing the surveyors, you know, going across the heartland and out west towards the west, surveying where they're going to lay the railway and where they're going to put the roads in the towns and cities. And there's always some guy kind of wearing a tie or whatever he's wearing. He's, you know, surveying everything the way they do it. And Eric's like that. He's very, very meticulously, he studied the ways of God, the systems of God. And I sat in awe, even though we've been friends for a long time, I sat in awe last night. I thought, man, that was awesome. I want to watch it again. So I'm going to play that for you right now, that portion of it. And then I'm going to come back live. I'm going to do all my teaching live. So that'll be fresh. And we'll take any comments, questions, and things like that that anybody might have. All right. So listen, now listen. Hopefully everybody got that purchased the workbook, got them. If you didn't, you let us know. Send an email to admin@michaelpink.com if there's any issue like that. Wally usually runs this for me. He ran it last night. His wife fell in the garage and she broke her femur. That's the thigh bone, which is connected to the knee bone, if you know what I mean. And that was horrible. And she had surgery, had some plates and nails and screws and whatever. So this morning, she couldn't even sit on the bed. It was very painful. So he's with her today. So I'm doing the show here myself, and my wife is hopping on to answer anything she can in the chat. So that's where we're at on that. So thank you, everybody, for your prayers for my good friend Wally and his wife, Joe. And so we're going to get going. And Father, I just pray right now in the name of Jesus, you are, Holy Spirit, the great teacher. I ask you to teach us, to show me, put your words in my mouth and put your words in everybody else's ears, that we'd hear what the Spirit of God is saying. We bless you, Father. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. All right, guys, I'm going to share my screen, and we're gonna roll with Eric Beck. Here goes. Give me a second to put it on.
So appreciate you. So, I'll just dive into just get everybody rolling right now. It is a very interesting time. It is a very interesting time in history. And there's a lot that we need to be paying attention to, because what I really want to help you guys do tonight is I want to help you live in two worlds. So if you want to think of it back to the time of Christ, has been what I would call the time in the ocean. We built a boat, we had a mission, we got on the boat, and we've been sailing it. And I think somewhere in the last 50 years, that boat hit land. And we have been trying to row that boat across land, and we're dragging it. See, if you can get this image in your mind, we're dragging this boat across land, and it's not working very well. People are falling off of it. People are abandoning it. People are confused, and they don't understand, and they're questioning the mission. Mm-hmm. You might be questioning the mission tonight in your life, in your business, in your profession. You might be at a point where you're just not sure anymore. And I think a lot of us are there. If you watch TV or the news or any of that stuff, well, first of all, God help you and deliver you from any addictions you might have. I'm not a big fan of hyperbole for the sake of selling ads, and it's on the left and the right. But what I am a big fan of doing is staying on mission and saying, okay, we had a mission that was to disciple nations. We had a mission that was to transform lives and to set the captives free. We had that mission. And what's happened is because we've not learned to think systematically, I don't mean logically, that's different, but to think in terms of systems, we're starting to see that what I would call the devotional approach to spirituality has run aground and has really been suffering. Now, like some of you, I'm sure I saw somebody say that they were from Tennessee. I grew up in Tennessee, so go Tennessee in the house, go Vols. I feel that we all probably had some experience that we would call devotional faith. That was, the story of Zerubbabel, or the story of David and Goliath, or the story of Samuel, or the story of Moses. And we really learned those stories in a way that is that inspiring, and it makes you feel good, and there's something in it. But what we didn't get out of it was the training that it talks about in Hebrews 5. Okay, in Hebrews 5, it says, but the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. Okay, those are the ones that eat the meat. Well, the devotional approach to spiritual growth has had us on milk for a long time. And the problems that have grown up around us cannot be solved on a diet of milk. They can only be solved on a diet of meat. So let's hear it for the carnivores, right? It's a different season. Things are happening in the culture that literally I wouldn't have believed you if you had said that even 10 years ago. I would have said, no, that will never happen. That can't happen. Well, as I've learned in my time in the military, combatives training, survival schools, all kinds of crazy stuff in the wilderness Michael was talking about, what I learned from that is that one of the things that distinguishes people who are going to survive from people who are not is the people who admit the quickest what's happening. The more quickly you come to terms with what's called a situational awareness, when you become truly aware of the situation and you let go of your fears and your projections and your hopes, and you just drop right into what's really going on, that's what I'm talking about. When you do that, you'll see our mission hasn't changed. Please don't abandon your mission because the boat seems to be ineffective. I'd like to offer you a truck, a car, a helicopter, an airplane, something else. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And part of that is built on the worldview of systems. So my first introduction to this, although Michael says that it was working at eMyth, and that really was great. It was a wonderful place to kind of cut my teeth and grow as a young business coach. Got a lot of experience, but I also saw something very, very fundamental that happened. There was a time when McDonald's Corporation came to us at eMyth, and they said, we want to work with you guys. And we basically said back to them, we wrote our book about you. We're using you as the model. You are what Michael Gerber called the franchise model, the largest small business in the history of the world. And we're teaching all of our clients to systemize their business and organize it the way you guys did. Why in the world would you want to come and hear from us? And they said, that's true. That's true. We do have the systems pretty well nailed down. We've done a pretty good job of that. And you're right. But our problem is we can't get the people. We can't get our team. We can't get those burger flippers to use the systems. Now, that's an amazing confession. And I don't know if anyone else in the room was knocked on their keister like I was, but I was. And I felt like what God was saying is, that's it right there. That's it. Now, I grew up in the 70s, so I remember some of those movies really well. And so I'm going to use a movie analogy here, so forgive me. The very first Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker gets in the X-Wing fighter. Remember, and he's going to try to blow up the Death Star. Okay, does everybody remember that scene? There's lasers flying everywhere. The John Williams music is going. It's so intense. And what he's got to do is he's got to drop down into this little, canyon. And at the end of the canyon, he's got to shoot a special shot that hits a special target that's really small and very, very hard to hit. And I remember when he was going in there, you know, his heads up display lights up to say, you're on target, take the shot now. That's what it felt like to me. When the largest small business in the history of the world, with billions served, said, we've got the organization, but there's not a connection with the people. What can you do for us? The answer was, again, not to kick my playpen, kind of wah, and not really all that great. It wasn't too much later that I decided to leave and start my own company. And I've really been running it on this idea, which is that systems that are organized God's way always improve the user. Systems organized any other way, we could call it the Babylonian way or the Egyptian way or the Pharaoh way, to kind of call in this slavery idea of really what the enemy wants to do to all of us, is to enslave us or keep us believing that we're slaves, even though we're not. Hey, whatever you want to call that worldview other than God's way, those systems are always about profit and win-lose and control. And they're not about development. They're not about freedom. They're not about improvement. They're not about helping each individual reach the fullness of their calling and finding really their best future self in the context of that work. So we're going to dive into one of the modules that I've created that Michael approved. You know, he looked at 7 or 8 of the modules in the Founders Fire coaching program, and he said, no, don't do that one. Don't do that one. No, that one's terrible. I don't even, let's delete that one. Here, let's do this one. I'm kidding. He didn't actually do that, but he did say, which one do you want to teach on? And this is the one we're going to go through tonight, which is about how we actually systemize. Okay, now I want to give you one idea, and then I'm going to take us into some of the notes and whatnot. Here is the big idea. The big idea is, if you were to take the New Testament, and every single place in the New Testament, it says the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. The kingdom of heaven is like, if you took every one of those phrases and you replaced the word kingdom with the word system, your faith will go through the roof. Now, how can I say that? That's a pretty bold claim. I'll tell you how. Jesus remarked that he had not seen such great faith in all of Israel, in the house of God. He had not seen such great faith as a biblical scholar, as a Torah expert, as a teacher of the law. No, as a pagan who was likely a murderer and a rapist. Who is that person? A centurion, a Roman centurion. Because the Roman centurion was in this situation where he needed help. Someone in his household was ill. And he says, and it comes to Jesus's attention, but the Roman centurion says, no. You don't need to come to my house. For I too am a man under authority. And when I say to this one, go, he goes. And I say to this one, stay, he stays. And I know that all you need to do is give the word. And it says the most amazing 2 words to me. Practically, I'm just probably some other place, but to me, I'm telling you, it's right up there. These 2 words that Jesus said, Jesus marveled. I don't know what it takes to make Jesus marvel, but he did. It said, Jesus marveled and said, I've not seen such great faith in all of Israel. What does that mean? It means that this Roman centurion understood the system of authority that operated in the kingdom of God. He saw it. I don't know how he saw it, but he saw it, and Jesus saw him see it. And he said, oh, that is very unusual. I've never seen that one before. When we start to see the system of God, not just a fairy tale version of a kingdom, like a king and a sword and the throne and all that and the crown, and that's fine. That's fine. It's not a theological point. It is a strategic point. When you recognize that the system of God is what brings freedom. The system of God is what sets your mind free. You're not going to be like the person who looks in the mirror, goes away and can't remember their face, double-minded, unstable in all their ways. What's happening there? What is the difference between order and disorder? Where the system of God is, where the kingdom of God is, there's liberty, there's freedom, there's focus. Like it says in the Old Testament, where there's vision, right? There is restraint. Where there's vision, there is life. I know it says it in the negative, but that is what it means, right? Where there's no vision, people cast off restraint. Where there's no vision, people perish. That must mean that the opposite is true. Where there is vision, where there is that structure, the kingdom of heaven, like Jesus said, is at hand. Now, I don't want to go too far theologically, but I do want to rattle some cages here for a second and help you see that the better life, the better impact, the more faithful alignment to your calling is on the other side of your thinking. And if you think God's thoughts after him, you're establishing the kingdom. You are building the system of God. Now, one of you Bereans on here will probably go do a word search on this. If you haven't done it already, it's a really good idea. Don't leave the webinar to do it. You could do it at a different time. But a lot of people have never really done a word search, like a concordance-based word search, to really understand the meaning of the word that's translated as faith. But it is the internal superstructure that holds everything together. Now, if that's not a system, I don't know what a system is. And you know who turned me onto this on a biblical level was Michael Pink. It was Michael Pink. Before he wrote the Rainforest Strategy, he was sharing it. I heard him talk about it in different ways. And of course, as soon as he published the book, I got a copy and devoured it. Why? Because it's the best articulation of the systems of God as represented in the natural world that I've ever seen. It says that the whole created order testifies to God, not just by words, not just humans, but trees and squirrels that eat some certain nut in the middle of the rainforest that only their jaws are strong enough to crack open, and it only works in this soil. And it's like 100 different special things that cannot be the reflection of randomness. It cannot be the reflection of meaninglessness. It cannot be the reflection even of chaos. What it is a reflection of is the mind of God. And it's our job as the mature, back to Hebrews 5, who train ourselves through constant use, not once a week, and not the devotional, Jesus loves the little children of the world. That's wonderful, okay? If that was going to change the world, it would have already. It would have. That's a great foundation. That's what Hebrews says. That foundation is great, but it's milk. We got to build on the foundation. When our mission seems in jeopardy, the question is not, is the mission wrong? The question is the system wrong? Am I perpetuating or am I participating in a way of doing things that is on mission, but it's the wrong tool? It's the flathead screwdriver instead of the Phillips, right? It's the shovel instead of the backhoe. It's the right mission, but the tools. Are we training to get those tools that are going to make a bigger and bigger impact? I think you're all here tonight because you want to. I think that's why you're here. I think that something in your heart has compelled you to come here tonight, that being the Spirit of God, to say, hey, there's something powerful and I need to know about it. And not only do you need to know about it, but for you guys who are business owners, your team needs this. Because that is a group of people that you can have a massive influence on and disciple them. Okay, what about your customers? What about your market? What about your community? You see, when you start establishing the systems of God in how you live your life and how you do your work, that is a ripple effect out that brings what? What do they say? When the righteous are in power, the people rejoice. Okay, it doesn't mean becoming the king of the universe and then suddenly everything will get fixed. Okay, what it does mean is realizing that Jesus said he was the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You are that. He didn't say he's the king of peasants. Aren't we the ecclesia? We are the ecclesia, those called out to rule. Go look it up, good Bereans. Some of you know it, and probably most of you do, especially if you've been following Michael Pink around for a while. Called out to rule, ecclesia. Basically, it translates to something like Senate. Oh, so Jesus is the King of Kings. You mean he's the king of like Napoleon and the king of like, Arthur? No. The king of the people who are supposed to be establishing the kingdom. who are supposed to be bringing that system. So I'm going to get us into some details, having laid a little bit of that foundation. And then I'm going to transition over to Mr. Pink here for his part of this. So if you guys want to take a look at this, I'm going to try to bring up a notes page. So you, now that's what, as we say in Tennessee, that's cooking with grease right there. So here we go. We're going to get this going. All right. So the first thing that I want to bring to our attention here ultimately is the understanding of what we're doing. Okay. What are we really trying to do? What we're really trying to do is to understand at this level, our time. What is our time? How do we spend our time and what do we do? How do we know what we need to know and how do we not? Ultimately, to me, I think that's the question that we all have to ask and answer. What is our time worth? So I'm going to put this here. So time equals your life. And if you were bought for a price, then that means that your life is owed to someone. That guy. So I can't spend my time in any other way than relating to Jesus as a type of investor. I'm going to say that again. If my time, what I do, okay, the space in which I can act is my life. Okay, people have said time is money. That is completely false. Time is not money. Time is what God purchased through Jesus' blood and redeemed. And so now, like it says in Corinthians, and I think it's 1 Corinthians 3:13, that everyone is going to give an account of his work. And that work, the time that he has spent building that work is going to have to pass the test of fire. And it calls it the day. Okay. That means this time I'm accountable for it. Just like if you went to an investment banker and you said to the investment banker, hey, I want to start a business and I need $3 million to do it. What would that investment banker or private equity person, what would they ask of you? Here's what they would ask of you. What are you going to do with the money? Okay, I want to know what your burn rate is. How much money will you spend by month in what category? When will we get to break even? When will we get to cash flow positive? When will we get to profit? And you would have to give them, I've done several of these, 40, 50, 80 pages of everything about your market and your demographics and your cash flow planning and projection, all the profit margins, your supply chain, your management team, all the technology you're going to use, and you're going to give it to that person. And what is that person going to say to you? They're going to say no. And you're going to refine it and you're going to give it to another person and another, and another, and another, and another, all going to say no. And maybe on the 27th person, you'll get a yes. And then once they give you that money, what are they going to expect from you? Probably every week or two. An accounting. That's where I want you thinking right now. I want you thinking like an investment banker. I want you thinking like an entrepreneur. But we're going to add the thinking into that framework of the kingdom of God, of the systems of God. So if my time is my life and my life has been bought for a price, that means it's an investment. And that my job is to understand exactly how I'm using my time and understand what it's worth. So one of the things that we do in our Founder Star coaching program is we do a time log. I have all my clients do this. Do a time log. For how long? 1 week. And probably in 30-minute increments. And just see what you do. And then ask yourself a couple of questions. Would you be proud to show this to an investment banker who gave you human US dollars or wherever country you're from? Okay. Just even at that level, would you show up and say, this is what I did in a week and be proud of it? Be like, man, this person's going to be so happy they invested in me. How much more the standard goes up to do that with God? To say, am I really spending my time correctly? So we do this exercise and we say, okay, first thing is look for anything in your time log that you did. And some of you might be thinking of something even right now that you kind of know, really you shouldn't do. And so I'm going to put this as a stop. This is an area where we should stop. Okay. And then how much of your week is stuff you probably shouldn't be doing and someone else in your organization should do, or you could outsource it, or you could delegate it in some way. Most people average about 30% of their week. I simply ask them, okay, 30% of your week, what would you pay someone to do that work? What would you pay? What would your hourly rate be that you pay them? And let's just be, ultra generous. Let's say that it was $20 an hour to check the email, to open the bills, to make sure that the shop light is turned on and that the heater is running and whatever else. This stuff that you are doing, but it's not really in alignment with who you are. It's not getting you to the pinnacle point, your creative maximum, the fulfillment of the calling that's on your life. Really, it's just work. And the more time you spend there, instead of at the helm of the ship, the more time the ship's going to go in circles. So you go, okay, $20 an hour. There you go. All right. And if it's 30% of your week, a 40-hour work week, let's say that's, would that be 12 hours? So I've got 12 hours here. 12 hours times $20 an hour. That's what you're selling a third of your time for. But a lot of people, of course, they'll say, well, that's not actually the case, Eric. In reality, my week is about 80% stuff I know I really shouldn't be doing. I'm not talking about sin. I don't mean that. I mean things that someone else could do. So now what's that? It's a lot bigger number. So let's just say that it would cost you $750 a week to offload that to someone else. Now you're like, well, I can't afford that. Well, let's see about that. What's your time worth as a business owner? Okay. Well, it's hard to say. It depends on the size of your business. I put most people, whether they're realizing the income or not, if you look at the potential value that they can create, most people who are solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, probably their time is worth about $750 an hour. And most people go, that can't be true. And I want to say to you, that thinking is really not doing you any favors. You really need to let go of that thinking, because this is nothing compared to the real wealth that's been invested to buy your life. Could you put a number on it? Of course you couldn't, right? And it would be in some ways rude to even try. So what I want to do is I want to draw your attention to, this question, are you spending a $750 an hour person? Here's the punchline. You know where it's going. On $20 an hour work. And if you are, why? Why? I'll tell you the answer. Because you're not thinking in the system of God. You're thinking in the system of man, the system of the enemy, the system of distraction, the system of fear, the system that does not set the captives free. And when we put on the mind of Christ, like it says, what do you think happens when you put on the mind of Christ? You think the thoughts of Christ. And the thoughts of Christ are what establish the system of God. This will change how you see everything. But it goes back to understanding. My time is my life. My life was bought by this guy on this. Not in money, but in something far more valuable than that. So if I am going to relate to him as a good steward, faithful in little, faithful in much, the parable of the talents, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm going to be a good steward, I've got to see it this way. Then I start thinking about, wait a minute, maybe I need to give an accounting, even just to myself right now, of how I deal with time. Maybe I need to understand that my time is way more valuable than I think it is. Why would it be so much more valuable? Alignment. Alignment. When you're in alignment with your calling, the value of what you're doing goes up. I'll give you one more idea here, and then we'll switch over to another idea. Benjamin Franklin, as you probably saw in the emails for coming here, was America's first millionaire. Okay. I didn't really know a lot about Benjamin Franklin, but I was researching a book that I was writing, and I found a picture of his journal, and it's at the Smithsonian. And that picture of that journal shows that he was giving a daily account of his time. He did what we would call today block scheduling. Inside the Founders Fire coaching method, it's actually called anchor activities. These are the activities that anchor you to your vision. And I want to tell you, having a daily plan does one main thing that changes everything. Okay, imagine this. Imagine that you have all these, well, I should probably do that in blue. Sorry, let me get that corrected. There we go. Let's do this in blue because this is going to be raindrops. You have all these little raindrops falling down in the air here in Colorado right now. It's not rain, it's snow, if you can believe it. They're all falling down to hit the ground. Okay. Let's say, just for grins, that this is 500 pounds of water. You'd be happy to go out there and stand in it. Be right here, especially you guys in Florida. You're happy as a clam. This is great. Maybe you got an umbrella. You know, that's okay. But it would be pretty easy to be out there in the water having fun. Okay, great. What if we took all 500 pounds and we put it into one stream, maybe about an inch wide? You think you'd want to stand under that one? No, you wouldn't. What's the difference? Focus. A lot of you are spending your time like this. You have a disparate focus, this and that, and this and that, and this and that, and this and that. And because the enemy has gotten you separated, divided, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Because your attention is fractured and the way you use your time is so spread out. What kind of impact do you have? Very little. Well, Eric, are you telling me to work harder? I can't. I can't literally work another minute in the day. No, I'm not. Pharaoh is telling you that. And every time you think you don't have enough time to do what it is you're supposed to do, you're believing a lie. This is the slave driver in Exodus 3. It could be Exodus 1, verse 3. I might have got that wrong. This is the slaving. Worked ruthlessly is what the Bible says. Well, what about over here? What about when I focus? What's that? I'll tell you what that is. That's Mary. Oops. See if I can write that correctly. Okay. Mary. Martha, Martha, you were worried about many things, but Mary has chosen the 17 things, the 45,000 things, the stuff that keeps you fear of missing out things. No. But Mary has chosen the one thing. Watch this, and it will not be taken from her. Do you feel like your work is getting taken from you? All these little efforts, these little micro efforts throughout the day that cause decision fatigue, stress, and anxiety, all of that. You're like, well, yeah, but it's awesome. And it's like 500 pounds of awesomeness. Not if it's spread out, it's not. The sun can warm the earth, but a magnifying glass can set something on fire. This is what we're talking about over here, is focusing that time. And we do that by doing what Benjamin Franklin did. What he did is he created a workflow for his day, a block schedule of time that looked basically like this. Look like this. So in the morning, I'm going to ask a very important question. What good shall I do this day? That's the first question when your eyes open up. What is God calling me to do today? Now, we have a lot of processes to help you get that answer absolutely crystal clear, which we won't go through tonight. But that's number one. What do you think you should do at the end of the day? What good did I do this day? You see, anybody who's in training watches the game tape. Anybody who wants to be a professional doesn't just go play the game for fun. They play the game and then they watch and see what happened. Not just the score, but each little micro step, each little play, each little moment of the game, they're looking to see, what can I do better? It's called review. And it's what professionals do. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. Those of us who are kingdom-minded and know, I can't stay on the milk. Well, Eric, what is the meat? Right here. I am vision driven and I'm accountable. This is the first step. The second step then is to create our blocks. And while I won't show the picture of his journal, maybe Michael has emailed that to you guys. It's available publicly. He has a block for getting ready. This is his prep block. And this was like 5 to 8 a.m. Then he had a work block. His first, what I would call a deep work block. If any of you guys know Cal Newport's work and his book called Deep Work, highly recommend it. Then he had lunch, and that was 11 to 12. Then he had his afternoon work block, and that was 1 to 4, whatever it was. Then he had an evening block, which I won't fit onto here. You're like, well, Eric, I get all that. Is this like Franklin Covey daytimer, like Q1, Q4, quadrant 1, quadrant? No. This is not a to-do list. The elimination of time debt is done simply because you are pre-spending all of your time. You can get out of time debt, the stronghold, the mental stronghold that keeps you a slave, by simply asking the question, why am I not pre-spending my time? If it was prepaid by Jesus, I owe it to him to have a plan for it that doesn't look like wake up and try hard and don't sin. That is not enough game plan to turn the earth back into the freedom that it was designed for. So what I'm teaching you to do here is to understand these blocks are what we call anchors. These anchor activities flow in a recurrence, daily, weekly, once a week, twice a week, every other day, every other week. And that creates for you a structure that is exactly like a game plan that you would show to who? That you would show over here. Where's our investment banker? Yeah, down here. Here we go. Right there we go. We would show that. We would say, hey, it says everyone will give an account. Really? What if you handed them spreadsheets and said, I'll show you every day of my professional life? I want to tell you what, the reason Benjamin Franklin made such an impact was in part because he adopted this way of thinking. He was, by today's standards, as you probably saw in the email, worth over $10 billion. Why? Because he focused, because he was serious, because he laid this plan out and he got himself out of time debt. I don't know that he ever was in time debt. Last thing that I'll say tonight, and again, we can come back to some of these if you guys want to, is that this leads us to a set of systems that serve people and bring incredible revenue and sales. If it's just you or it's your team or you buy and sell companies 100 times a week, I don't care. Wherever you're at in that scale, okay? Or you're 18 and you're just thinking, gosh, what am I going to do with my life? What we're going to get into in my next session, not tonight, but next session, Michael will talk about the timing of that, is really understanding exactly how what we're talking about here can get operationalized inside of your life, inside of a family, inside of a solopreneur, sole proprietor, inside of a small business of 5 to 10 people, or a medium-sized business, or even a very large business. It starts off with this thinking, because this is how you change behavior. If you want to see a change in the world, you have to change thinking. And if you want to change thinking, you have to adopt a story that has the right content in it from time immemorial. There's a reason why Jesus thought the way he did. And we could get into East versus West, and we could get into Greek versus Hebrew thinking. Oh, maybe we will, but not right now. Okay, the way we think changes everything. The story that we need to believe is the story of God's opinion of you. And the more you get in alignment with who he sees you to be by thinking his thoughts after him, the more you're going to establish the system of God. So I'll pause there and land the plane. I'm not sure if we're doing Q&A, but if we are, I'm happy to take some questions.
I sat down here just beside here and I just listened and I took it in. What you put it in the chat. Let me see what you guys thought about that. It speaks deeply to me. Hi, Susan. Thank you, Patricia. Yes. Gloria, Lillian, Oscar. Yeah. Yes. So Eric, we're going to be coming back tomorrow night, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to continue on. He's going to continue on with his. I've got a whole new thing I'm going to be doing Thursday night. And for those of you that are on the call right now because last night wasn't convenient for you. That may be also true about tomorrow night, which is why the Thursday night session, I'll be doing just like I'm doing this one. I'll be doing it Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and I'll send everybody out the link so you can jump in on it. So be watching your emails so I can get that done. It's a little bit tricky actually to get that the way I'd like to get it. And I'll be live, and Eric's portion from Thursday night will be recorded, God willing, and we'll play that on Friday, and I'll be live like I am now. So that's coming. And I'm going to share with you where I wanted to go with some of the content that God's given me. And so let me hop on that. I'm going to share my screen again. I actually chose this as the opening slide. This is this for those of you who are not as familiar with America. This is like the founding fathers. They're drafting up the Constitution, possibly the Declaration of Independence. Who knows? It's just an artist rendering. But what captivated me about this was the seriousness of the moment. And frankly, that's how I feel right now. That I feel like we are in the most serious time of my life. I'm concerned about the situation. And so I felt like I needed to give you as much as I possibly can in the time that we have allotted. And so I'm going to be sharing with you some things, and I'll give you a reason why in a minute. I've noticed in my life that I have led one person to Christ in church. I preached one Sunday morning at a church where I was going, and I was preaching that morning, and one person gave their life to the Lord. That's the only time that has ever happened. That's actually a remarkable story, but anyways. But I've probably led well over 100 people to Christ in the workplace. I'm talking about in the parking lot, the hallway, the conference room, the meeting rooms, the boardroom, the sales room, the car, wherever it is, customers' offices, retail stores, just in the place of that. And see, Jesus, what he said, I know there's a lot of people think different things about eschatology and when he's coming back, but what I do know he did say very clearly was that the wheat and the tares will grow up together. So the wheat's going to get stronger, the tares are going to get stronger, and they're going to be growing up together. And he said, don't pull up the tares now because it might dislodge the wheat. So let them both grow together. And then at the end of the time, we'll send out the angels and they're going to remove the tares. And then we're going to gather the wheat into the barn. You take that and smoke that any way you want to, but that's what he said. Now, what he said to do until he comes was this. He said, occupy till I come. And I've heard it preached and it sounds good, frankly, occupy like a military term, we occupying the land and all that. But really the Greek word for that is a word that means trade and do business. Trade and do business until I come. Why is that? Because it is strategic. It's because there are so many people that I have had the privilege of leading to Christ in the marketplace that weren't planning to be in church on Sunday. And he wants to position you and use you in that same way, I believe. It's about influence, having an influence in the culture. Salt is no good if it's still in the shaker, right? But there's a problem. And here's something that I've noticed, and it's in Ecclesiastes. It says, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. It doesn't say the poor man doesn't have wisdom. It just says nobody cares. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's the way it is. People who aren't successful in life, when I say that, I mean in terms of accomplishment, whether it's whatever their chosen endeavor is, whether it's sports or business or act, whatever it is, doesn't matter. People, if you're successful in that, they pay attention to you. If you're not, they tend not to. And so when I moved to this country from Canada, I got a job selling copiers in Nashville, Tennessee. I didn't want the job. God told me to work at that place. I was driving by. He said, that's where you're going to work. And I reluctantly went there because about the previous year, I had sold copiers in Canada and barely eked out a living. And the one thing I knew for sure was I never, ever wanted to sell copiers again. But he told me to go there and apply, and I did. And I got the job. And I said to the Lord when I was starting, I said, Lord, would you please bless me? I want to do so well that I can be a testimony to you. I want to be a testimony. I want to be a witness. I want to have some credibility, and I want to win my coworkers to question. See, what I wanted to do is I wanted to impact the world, and he was telling me to go sell copiers. At the time, it didn't make sense, but I was in, okay, I'll do it. On my first day, the vice president took me aside and explained the rules. And the rules went something like this. For every 4 or 5 companies that we were to demonstrate our equipment to, we should get 1 sale. The national average, he said, is 1 out of 4. We don't expect any sales your first month. We want you to make 2 sales your second month. And then after that, you should do 4 sales a month, meaning make 6 sales in your first 90 days. I was with the company 2 years. I never saw anybody actually hit that goal, but that was the goal. I got home, my wife said to me, what's bugging you? And I said, well, they're asking me to sell 1 out of 4. And she says, so what's the problem? I said, that means they're asking me to accept a 75% failure rate. What farmer plants 4 rows of corn and prays to God that just 1 of them comes up? I picked up my Bible and I said, I'm going to find principles and strategies that I can apply deliberately and consciously to business, specifically to sales. And instead of selling 1 out of 4, I intend to sell 1 out of 1. And she was like, well, good luck with that. So I went to work the next day and I reported at the branch office where I was working. And the manager said, what are your goals? I said, I've thought about it. I intend to sell 1 out of 1. He looked at me like he'd made the worst hiring decision of his career. But, you know, they'd already printed my business cards and I was on straight commission. So away I went. 90 days later, it was time for the company's quarterly review. All the salespeople are brought into a room. Your results are projected on a screen from all the branch offices and head office and so forth. And you got to explain what you did. And when it came my turn, I said, I've been here 90 days. I've made however many calls it was. And it's all on an overhead projector. And I said, and I've done from that 22 copier demonstrations. And I'm pleased to report to you that I also have 22 sales. It was 22 out of 22. And it was 3.5 times the goal of 6 that I never saw anybody hit. They couldn't believe it because most of the salespeople I was meeting for the first time, because they were from all other parts of the company, they pelted me with questions. And I wanted to be a testimony. I think I was. I heard one guy at the back say, all we need is some evangelists from Canada to tell us how to sell copiers. Now, what you need to understand is, what did I do? I went into the Word of God and I said, God, if you called me here, and this is true to you, listen, if he's called you to the business arena, Todd, if you're called into that business arena, Eileen, if you're called into that, Evelyn, if you're called into that arena, it only makes sense to me that he would equip you. He would give you what you need. What the problem is, we go into those work environments and they tell us, the world tells us, or as Eric puts it, Pharaoh tells us, here's how you'll do this. I already knew how they did it. I didn't want to do it that way again. It didn't work out so well for me, probably because I was conflicted. A lot of Christians, they take that, I call it the ways of Pharaoh, and then they dip it in the Nile River, kind of try to wash off some of the scum, and they put a Bible verse on it and they call it Christian, but it's not. So he told me that, you know, we started off with Proverbs 3, verse 3 and 4, which says, bind mercy and truth around your neck and write them on the tablet of your heart, and you will find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and the sight of man. And I thought, wow, that's what I need. I need favor. This was the first thing he showed me. So how do you bind mercy around your neck? How do you write it on your heart? These are the kinds of things that you need to do, the questions you need to ask in that time that Ben Franklin apparently did, and what I often do, I do regularly now, in the morning, is I spend that time, and I might spend hours on just 2 or 3 verses, saying, help me understand what you're saying here, Lord. It was that way. And so I finished off the year, by the way, I set a record for the most ever sold in a single year. And I worked less than anybody. And I didn't do any of the crazy pressure stuff that people tell you to do. I didn't do any of that stuff. They made me the sales manager. First week of January, the next year, I was the new sales manager. They gave me a team of 5 people. What they wanted to know was, is it transferable? This is important for you to know. Is the things that Eric is teaching and the things that I am teaching, and bear in mind, Eric, that's his company, and this is what I do, but the things that we are teaching, are they transferable? Can you do it? And the answer is yes. In fact, my sales team, after 10 months, my team of 5 people, their results were improved, not by 10% or 20 or 30 or 40, not even by 100%. It was 430% year over year. Friends, that's pretty staggering. It's staggering. How do you quadruple results? I have to tell you, I did lead several of them to Christ. There was one guy, I think his name was Jim. I prayed, I witnessed to him. I didn't know it, but it really angered him because he wasn't a believer. And he quit shortly after that. I never knew why, at least not for a few years. Then one day I get a phone call. He said, Michael, I've been looking for you for years. You remember that day when you witnessed to me? Yeah, I do. He said, I got so mad. That's why I quit. I said, really? I said, yeah. He said, but I couldn't get away from what you said to me, what you asked me, what you told me. And I gave my life to Jesus Christ. Started going to church, went to Bible school, and now I'm in full-time ministry. And I'm trying to track you down just to tell you the impact that you had, which, by the way, wouldn't have happened had I been only at church, because that's not where this kind of thing usually happens. So success gives you influence. Money can also buy you influence, which is one of the reasons why it's important to, when you succeed, you can use that success to actually get some influence. Now, people go to the world for their water. Water is like information that's in the Bible, the washing of the water of the word, and many other scriptures I give you. And what they do is it's like drinking water from the Mississippi River. And I don't think that's a very good idea. If you look at the river, it doesn't look very appetizing to me. I'd rather drink from the pure water of the word, something that looks like this. I could, get on my hands and knees and drink out of that river very easily. And the difference between the two looks like this. The glass on the left is taken from the Mississippi. The other one's taken from the beautiful mountain stream. Which would you rather drink? And you could argue, I could argue, that in point of fact, both of them are 99%, maybe 99.8%, I don't know, pure water, pure, beautiful water. But it's the little stuff, it's the other stuff, it's the contaminants in there that if you drink the one on the left is going to make you sick. You see, people say, well, I'm going to eat the meat and spit out the bones. But the problem is, information isn't like meat, really, in that regard. It's more like water. And a lot of people, a lot of Christians, in fact, they go to the world and they drink out of the Mississippi River because that's where everybody else seems to be drinking from. And it's just not healthy, and I don't think it's very smart. So here's the advantages of doing it God's way, in my opinion. First of all, it honors God. I like to give him honor. Secondly, the ways of God are far more better. They're far better. I mean, think about it. I went from a barely making it guy, come down to the States, start a job, and instantly, my first quarter, 3.5 times quota that nobody hit. And it just carried on from there. By the way, I didn't do 100% for the year. It fell. It went down to, I think, somewhere between 90 and 92%. But still, considering 25% was the national average, it was pretty impressive. But whatever you do, don't think that it's about Michael Pink, because it isn't. It's about Jesus. It's about his word and about his ways. And the nice thing about studying God's word in this is that you're fellowshipping with the word. You are fellowshipping with him in the process all day long, because you're thinking, how did he do this? So that's why I like doing that. Now, you get a continuous stream of input because the word always speaks to you. And by the way, he blesses his ways, not ours. Now, what I teach is biblical wisdom, and I also teach natural law, because it turns out he made that too. So tonight or today, I'm going to share with you an overview of 3 different maps. And I'm going to apologize a little bit up front, and I hope I can do it better today than I did last night, because the point of the fact is these 3 maps or templates, if you will, that are in the scripture, nobody knows about them. It doesn't seem to me. And they're each dozens of hours of teaching. And I'm going to spend maybe 15 minutes on each if I do that. And what the point of it is I want you to know the maps are there. It's like an atlas. Okay. And I felt like if I give you this and you have the notes, I'm not going to go over all the points in the notes. If you have the notes, if you don't, you can get them, send us a note or whatever. We'll make sure you get the notes. There's a link for that. It's actually michaelpink.com/workbook. That's where you get the notes if you want to get them. So I'm going to jump into this, and I'm going to show you the three different maps, if you will, or templates that are in the scripture that can absolutely change your life. The first one is called the Moses Blueprint, or the Moses Tabernacle. It's the Moses Blueprint for Ultimate Success is what I call it. Now, some of you have heard of it. Some of you are very familiar with it, but the basic thing you should know is this was the blueprint that God gave to Moses. He dictated it, and he said, I want you to reproduce this in exacting detail, no variation, do it exactly like I told you. There's a reason for that. It's a replica of symbolically of what is in heaven. Now, what I want to point out to you is this. This will change your life. I think it changed my life, okay? And I'm going to give you the cursory view. But in this, I call it 3 levels. There's level 1, 2, and 3. And basically, it's an outer court, an inner court, and the Holy of Holies. Some call it the outer court, the holy place, and the Holy of Holies. But anyway, the outer court is what I call level 1. Level 1 is outdoors. It's illuminated by, catch this, by natural light. It speaks of naturally observable practices, strategies, tactics, that kind of thing. Anybody can learn them. And there are 2 pieces, they call it furniture, that are in the outer court. One is this brazen altar where they sacrificed animals and burnt them. And then the next one was a wash basin where they would wash. Those are the 2 things that the priest would wash there. And you say, well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, it's got an awful lot to do with it. I can't get into the detail of that, but I will say this. The altar of sacrifice dealt with character. Character. That's what it dealt with. And there were 5 kind of sacrifices that were very specific to that. And 2 of them were mandatory, 3 of them weren't. But the issues that were dealt with, you see, catch this. These people, the children of Israel, had been in Egypt for 10 generations, 400 years. If you've ever been to a communist country where people grew up in communism, they're like zombies. The mindset that was in them had to be changed. And so the first place it was changed was right here, where their character and their thinking was changed. And so what happened there was the trespass offering had to do with, hey, I sinned. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I stole. I did whatever I did. And it's accountability. Accountability is incredibly important. Hold yourself accountable. Being willing to be held accountable changes a lot of things for you and about you. So they all of a sudden began being accountable in a certain way that if they stole something, they had to return it. That's my dog. He'll be fine. They had to return it plus 20%. So like people were leaving their lawnmowers and their jet skis out in the front yard. They didn't have those in, but it was like, steal mine, please, because we're going to catch you and then I'm going to get 20% back. So it was kind of a good thing in that regard. But so accountability, they had to learn accountability. The next thing they had to learn was humility, which was basically, this was a sacrifice for unintentional sins. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. And it really has to do with teachable. You want to know how much that affects you? I don't know about you. How teachable are you right now? Are you set in your ways? You think, I know what I need to know. Well, maybe you do. But I can tell you, I'm constantly learning. I'm very teachable. My friend and mentor, Peter J. Daniels, 90 years old, has read 5,000 autobiographies. He read my series that you guys may be getting, the God's Best Kept Secrets series. He read them twice and then gave me an incredibly good endorsement. He's a learner. And so I highly recommend that. But I had a guy come in and it was back in 2015. A friend of mine was in a business. They had 12 sales agents. They were down to 3 and they were looking for a job. And he was thinking of shutting the company down. He said, can you help me? Well, the nice thing was he was a Christian, is a Christian. And he said, it gave me complete carte blanche to run that whole system and the sales and all that completely biblically without any apologies. So I did. That was in July. By the end of the year, they turned the corner and made a 7-figure profit. He asked me to stay on for another year, and I did. And then another year after that, and there was a reason. He wanted to see if he could make the Inc. 500 list. Well, they look at a 3-year growth rate. And by the end of the 3rd year, we had an 11,350% 3-year growth rate. And it was the 16th fastest growing privately held company in America. Think about it. If from a company that was like, there's 3 guys and they're looking for a job, and we're going to shut it down to, boom, number 16 on that number, the fastest growing real estate brokerage in the history of the Inc. 500. How does that happen? Well, one of the guys that led the way in sales said, Michael, I'm teachable. Tell me what I need to know. I will do exactly what you say. And others began to follow that pattern. So teachability is very important. Gratitude, generosity, total commitment. These were all represented by the various sacrifices, and they're very important. If you want to, you've got the workbooks. You can look at the notes that are associated with it and some of the stats about it. I don't have the time to get into that really. But then the priests would wash their hands and their feet, which speaks of their walk and of course, the work of their hands. And there was a 3-step process that they followed, which is what you should do and what I should do in our daily work. Is they would basically reflect, because the water was like a mirror, and so they would reflect on their situation. And then, so the way we do that in business is say, well, what happened? Okay, and then you evaluate. Well, what does this mean? And then, of course, you correct. Where can I improve? If you do that on anything you do on a regular basis, you're going to have rapid improvement. So this is all level 1 kind of stuff. Level 2 is incredibly effective, because level 2 now, the thing about level 2 is you go into the inner court. Now, I look at this as a business model, okay? Level 1, it's outdoor. Level 2, you're indoor. But there's this beautiful solid gold lampstand, which was the only source of light. And it burnt continuously. And it represents the 7 spirits of God. But it burnt and it illuminated a table of bread. Now, this golden lampstand, basically, I won't get into it right now, but it really, I do a whole teaching on that for marketing, the 7 marketing secrets from Isaiah 11, which is very powerful. But that lampstand would be, and this is part of the Jesus School, by the way. Oh, we got tons of content in there that when you're a member, you can watch whatever you want. But it would illuminate this bread. This table had 12 loaves of bread. And the 12 loaves of bread they basically represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. And so I found that very interesting, because the bread is, Jesus said, I'm the bread of life, right? And so the priest had to eat that. So in a sense, you are what you eat. So I started thinking, what do you mean you're eating Simeon and Levi and Reuben? Now, I understand Reuben having a Reuben sandwich, but, going all through that. So I had an idea. I'd seen this thing, maybe you've seen it too, the prophetic etymology of the first 10 generations from Adam to Noah. If you look at the column on the left, it goes from Adam to Seth to Enosh to Canaan to all the way down to Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. And then if you look on the column on the right, it's the meanings of their names, which tell a story in order. And the story says, man appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down teaching. His death shall bring the despairing comfort or rest. I was like, holy moly. I wonder, I didn't come up with this. I learned this from a Jewish guy that was teaching this, and I was pretty impressed. And so I thought, I wonder what happens if you take the 12 tribes of Israel, because they're represented, don't forget, by those 12 loaves of bread. They're represented by that. So I'm thinking, well, what if you took them and you put them in their order, their birth order, and took out their meaning? Would that tell us a story? Would we learn anything from it? And there is so much to learn from this. What I'm trying to tell you, friends, is there's volumes and volumes and volumes of learning you can do to radically change it, your life and your outcomes. But this one here, here are the 12 names, right? See and hear what the Lord has to say. See is Reuben, hear is Simeon. So like, for example, you say, what do you see? What's your vision? It has to do with mindset. It has all kinds of implications. Who are you listening to? Think about that. Who are you listening to? Do you know that's the second question God asked Adam? The first question is, where are you? It wasn't like God didn't know, like, where are you? I don't know. I can't find you. Where are you? Which is a very important question you need to ask yourself. Where are you in life, in relation to your goals? You say, well, I'm falling far short. Okay. And as Adam said, I'm naked. And God said, who told you you were naked? In other words, who have you been listening to? Have you been drinking from the Mississippi River? Who are you listening to? Who are you filling your mind with? And then it carries on. Then cleave to him, which is Levi, and praise him, which is Judah, knowing that the judgments or decisions you make, which is Dan, will lead to a time of struggling where you will wrestle, which is Naphtali, with your decisions. But then it says, because the next child that's born is Gad, which means troop or bringing in good fortune. So a troop help will come and break through, bringing good fortune with it, which will make you, Asher, happy and prosperous. And with that breakthrough comes the long-awaited reward, or Issachar, enabling you to Zebulun, dwell securely, and increase like a fruitful vine, which is Joseph, with authority like a son at the right hand of his father, which is Benjamin. So when I saw that, I mean, I was lit. And so I spent a long time studying that out, taking the names and looking at the mindsets. And there's a whole course inside the school of reset your mindset based on this. Because I don't go and say, let me go to, I don't know, Harvard or someplace like that and see what they can teach me. You know, because I found out the Harvard, they lie a lot. There's a Harvard textbook I got decades ago before I ever started this stuff. I bought it at a yard sale or something like that. And it was on the art of negotiating, something like that. And I think it was page 168 or something. It was talking about negotiating. And it had a subsection called strategic misrepresentation. What they were saying is, they just didn't want to use the lie word, but you can lie because it's called strategic misrepresentation. So you can misrepresent yourself strategically and it's okay. But I don't buy that. You want to know a model? You want to know a model? Goodness gracious. Let me take you back here for a second. You see that bread? That's the word of God. That's where I find my models. You want to know you want to know a model for, let's say, negotiating? Yeah. I mean, I find out that I read lots of books, sure. But the best model ever on negotiating that I've ever seen is written in the Bible. It's the last book before you get to the book of Hebrews. I hesitate to call it a book. It's a letter to Philemon, like 25 verses long, but I got 31 strategies out of that. If you want to know how the word of God, because this is what level 2 is all about, is the Holy Spirit, okay? The candle illuminating the word of God for whatever it is you're called to do. And so in my case, I was heading towards, I'm looking at negotiating. And so I see this model because the Apostle Paul, he's in jail for his faith, right? And he leads this guy, Onesimus, to Christ. And he wants him to go back to his former slave owner at the time, which was Philemon. But he wants Philemon to welcome him back as if it was Paul's best friend walking through the door, which is completely against societal norms. There was 60% slavery in Rome. If you were a runaway slave, which Onesimus was, it was a capital crime. So how did Paul successfully negotiate that so that not only did Onesimus go back and was received like it was Paul walking through the door, but he went on to be a bishop in the early church of Ephesus? How did that happen? That, my friends, is called the negotiating secrets of the Apostle Paul. We've got hours of teaching on that. So that's what I'm talking about in the Word of God. This is all level 2 stuff. Here's another level 2 thing. The third item in there was this altar of incense. And there's 4 different ingredients that went into the incense, and they speak of different things, but it will teach you about prayer like nobody's business. And then we finally get into level 3, which is the realm of the supernatural, because level 2 is the 60-fold return. I say that metaphorically, but level 3 is the supernatural, because this room, level 3, you go in there's no windows, there's no candles. It was illuminated by the supernatural presence of God, or as the Bible says in Hebrew, the Shekinah glory. And that is the realm of the supernatural. Now, I've got many, many stories that most people would say are supernatural. I personally think that supernatural is just a way of saying something that we don't understand. I think Jesus, when he said, like in Mark 11, 22, 23, he said, have the faith of God. For whoever says on the mountain, be removed and be cast in the sea, doesn't doubt in his heart, but believes those things he says will come to pass, he'll have whatever he says, right? So therefore, whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them and you'll have them, whatsoever things you desire. So he's just saying, here's how it works. He's just explaining it so that they could do it. By the way, the realm of the supernatural is level 3. When you study this, if you come into school, I hope you do, you're going to find out there's a ton of stuff there about how to walk in level 1, which is natural understanding, which is the realm of the 30-fold, which is where most people become millionaires because they master that. But level 2 allows you to go a much higher level because now you're getting God's wisdom applied to natural circumstances, which is far better. And then level 3, you're bringing in the realm of what we call the supernatural, which is even better. So that model is the one I wanted to teach you about. Now, that's the first map, if you will. The second one is called the Genesis business model. The Genesis business model is what the 7 days of business teach us about business. And the way I look at it, I came into my living room one day early in the morning. I said, Lord, how did you build your business? You know, the one called Planet Earth. How did you build that? Like, how did you do that? And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sit down for 20 or 30 minutes. So naive. And so I'm going to read Genesis 1, and I'm going to figure out how he did it, which was, of course, crazy. I mean, I think my course on that is probably 12 hours now, but I studied it out, and I'm going to give you the highlights. And the reason I'm giving you the highlights is because I want you to know where you can go and study it. Because some of you, what you need is the notes. And this is going to be all you need, and that's great. Some of you are going to want to get a lot more, and that's fine too. Whatever your needs are, that's up to you. But here's the highlights, so you know what you'll be getting. Day 1, he said, let there be light. Let there be light. Light's important because it enables vision, gives wisdom, it gives energy, motivation. That's what he did on day 1. And that's where you start your business. I need to have a vision. I need to have faith. I need to be motivated. Day 1 starts with that intangible. Then day 2 is basically where God divided the waters and he called it heaven, which is the realm of basically the principles or the ways of God. So day 2, without me taking the time to explain it to you, is about the ways of God. So in business, that means like, what are your guiding principles? Here's my vision. What are my guiding principles? That's the second thing I got to figure out. How are we going to guide our venture? Day 3, it says, let the dry land appear, and the plants will bring forth seed, they'll bring forth plants yielding seed and the fruit tree that yields fruit. But what I noticed when I was studying that is like, oh, wait a minute. The vegetables were first. Why is that important? Because the vegetables, you can have 2, 3, sometimes 4 crops in a year. That's, in business terms, that's cash flow. That's like, I'm going to go, when I'm starting my business, first thing I want to do is get the cash flow going. So I'm going to get these recurring accounts. They're small, but a number of them, and I'll be able to live on that. I'll be able to eat off of that while I'm growing my fruit trees, which might take 3, 4, 5 years to bear fruit. But once they do, they'll sustain me for the long haul. And so you have to understand what that is in business, which I think is a very profound realization. Day 4 is about management and the roles of management as outlined in the scripture. And you can see there are 7 roles of management, which are explained in the book of Genesis in chapter 1. Then you get to day 5, and it's about the birds and the fish. And listen, in case you didn't know this, when I'm trying to understand what something means or represents, I look in the scripture. So I said, Lord, what do birds represent? Well, the Bible says the birds of the air will tell you. That's marketing in business terms. They're flying overhead saying, hey, there's fish over here, or there's whatever's going on, especially early in the morning. You hear all kinds of stuff. So the birds will tell you the matter. And then he says, but the fish of the sea, well, they'll explain it to you. You see the difference? Marketing is like the big picture, and then the sales guys, they're going to explain it in some detail. So that's about sales and marketing, which is interesting. And then you get to day 6. And God made the beast and he made the man. And the Bible says there, he says, now ask the beasts and they will teach you. Say, what now? The beasts are going to teach me? Well, you know what? You might have heard my dog bark a minute ago. He's a beautiful Labradoodle. His name is Judah. He loves it. He suggests all the time we should get a dog. He thinks he's one of us. But anyway, I have learned so much from my dog and the way he relates to us and the way I relate to God and so forth. This is a really beautiful thing. So the beast can teach you. And so what I found in the scripture in Genesis 1, there's basically four categories. You want to pick your team. Of course, there's man, which has to do with ownership. There's cattle, which has to do with service. And there's beasts like lions and bears and has to do with leadership. And then there's creeping critters, which like insects and rodents, which the Bible, it tells you about them. It tells you about the rodent, the guy that hides himself in the rocks, the coney. And these are called whys, and why. It's all explained in the Bible. And so when you're building your team, these are the kind of people that you're looking for that have these kinds of traits, and they will do very well in their role. You don't want to hire a lion to do your bookkeeping because it's just not going to work out well. So day 7 was, let the systems work. The Bible says, and God, he rested. Why? Because everything was in place. The systems were working. He didn't have to oversee it every day, which is what Eric teaches, which is so powerful. And our call from God in the book of Hebrews is, let us labor, therefore, to enter into the rest. That's what our high calling is, to enter into the rest of God, which is a great teaching. Again, I can't do it. The the Genesis thing is a very big teaching. I'll give you a glimpse inside it in a minute. So that's that. But now the third one, because it kind of connects, right? The third map, if you will, is a tree. And I say, and God planted a tree. I love that picture. I don't know if you do, but I love it. It just moves me. It's the planet's most successful business model. And so why would I look at a tree for a business model? Like, who does that? Well, I'll tell you who does it. I do it. And I'll tell you why. I'm not the only one. George Washington Carver did. Solomon did. Paul knew about it. But before I knew any of those things, I'm going to ask you guys a question. You can put it in the chat. And Judy's probably, she can respond and so forth. But put it in the chat. I have to ask you this question. Now, listen. I'm going to tell you what happened to me and then ask you if it's ever happened to you. In the 90s, early 90s, I had my publishing company. You know, we published a lot of books. My first book, The Bible Incorporated, has sold hundreds of thousands of copies. I self-published it. But at some point, I remember, and I was out on my driveway. I remember exactly where I was. And I said, God, your word says that my God will supply all of your need according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. And I absolutely believe you. No doubt in my mind. But then with quivering lips, I said, but God, as far as I know, I'm not lying either. And my needs don't seem to be met. And your word says, according to your riches and glory, and I've heard that the streets are paved with gold. If I could go to heaven, if you don't mind, and just sweep the streets and maybe get some gold dust and put it in a little bag and then bring it back here, cash it and pay my bills, I'd be thrilled if that works that way. But I don't know how to get your riches and glory into tangible form. Has anybody ever been in a situation where you know the Bible says one thing, but your experience is something else? Anybody? Can you relate? Put it in the chat. So I was in that space. And you know what God said to me? I went for a walk in the woods. In my backyard, we had a few acres. And I'm back there, and there's a big old cedar tree there. And God did what he does so often with me. He asked me a question. He said, where did the tree get its wood from? This bookcase is made of wood. This phone is made of aluminum or whatever it's made of. They dug the aluminum out of the ground. But this wood used to be in a big tree, which used to be a small tree, which used to be a sapling, which used to be a seedling, which used to be a seed, which used to be kind of like nowhere. Where did the wood come from? And I said, God, I'm not a botanist. I have no idea where the tree gets its wood from. And he said, when you find out where the tree got its wood from, you'll understand how to get my riches and glory into tangible form. What he's saying is how to take the invisible, the thing you can't see, and put it into tangible where you can see. The word became flesh and dwelt among us. How do we incarnate? How does that happen? So I did what any reasonable person would do. I left the forest, got into my car, and drove straight to the library, the public library. And I walked in and I said, I need a book on where a tree gets its wood from. Like, how does that work? I said, preferably in the children's section. I need something easy to get a hold of. So they took me to a book. And as it turns out, the tree has to have 7 things. I'll tell you what those things are in a minute. And they're unbelievable. And I began to do some study. And I found out in Romans, for example, it says, since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. So the creation of the world, you can learn about God by observing what he made, what he's created. Interesting. Go to Solomon, 1 Kings 4:33-34. It says, and Solomon spoke of trees from the cedar of Lebanon, even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He also spoke of animals and birds and creeping things and fish. And it says, the men of all nations who had heard of his wisdom came to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Do you think they came to learn how to fish or learn how to prune a pear tree? Solomon got paid 666 talents of gold annually for his advice. He was a high-paid consultant. That's, in today's money, by the way, it's at the price of gold that I saw the other day is $1.5 billion a year in consulting fees, if you will. And he let them set the price. So there's something about this created order that you can learn from. Psalm 1:3 compares us to the tree, right? Tells us not to walk not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the way of the sinner, nor sit in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. In his law does he meditate day and night. And he shall be, he, meaning you and me, will be like a tree. Like a tree. Isaiah still calls us oaks of righteousness. Like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season. You're fruitful. Whose leaf will not wither. And whatever he does will prosper. That's the calling. That's how God sees us. That's the invitation to us. So I think, well, Lord, how does that work? Because I want to find out how you take the invisible and make it into a bookcase. How do you do that? And so I started studying the trees. I was sitting here in my living room one day, and the Holy Spirit spoke to me. He invited me to go to Panama, the country. I said, Panama? Isn't that a third world country? There's a lot more first world than I knew, frankly, but at the time, that was my perception. This is 2005, I think it was. And I said, I don't know anybody in Panama. I don't even know anybody who's been there. Why do you want me to go? He said, I want to show you something that has, basically financial ramification. I said, finance in an impoverished country? Okay, when do you want me to go? And he said, make haste. So 2 weeks later, I'm flying down to Panama with my wife. And, before I left, I met with a client. I said, listen, I'm going down to Panama. He said, what for? I said, I don't really know. How long are you staying? I'm not sure. Where are you going to be staying? I have no idea. Why are you going again? I said, I don't know. God told me to go. He said, well, I'll tell you what, if you look for a piece of property for me, I'll underwrite the whole trip. So I did. And he put an offer on a $30 million piece of, I think it was 3 kilometers of beachfront property. So, I did something business-wise down there. But, most of the time I was like, okay, God, now what? In my book, the very first book in the series of the God's Best Kept Secrets, this one right here, one of the secrets is walk with God. How do you walk with God? How do you get led by the Spirit? Anyway, I went down there and some amazing things happened. But some of the lessons are this. You want to succeed like a tree, and here's why. Because trees have about a 99.99% success rate compared to business, which has a 96% failure rate. Fact of the matter is, you take 100 entrepreneurs and come back that start a business, come back in 5 years, only 4 of them will still be in business with at least 1 employee and be profitable. Only 4. You plant 100 trees in an orchard, give them the 7 things that they have to have, come back in 5 years, they'll all be fruitful, producing lots of fruit and, expanding the franchise. So I thought I got to learn from that. So that's basically why I went after that. If your model, if you model your business after a tree, it'll be a freak of nature if you fail. Right now, it's a freak of nature if you succeed. So it's important. Now, trees have 7 divisions. I can't get into it right now, but the roots, the trunk, the branches, the flowers, the leaves, the xylem and phloem, they have 7 natural divisions like Adam Smith talked about in The Wealth of Nations in 1776, the division of labor. Very, very powerful insight, the roles that there. So I look at that and say, as a business, I got to make sure I'm fulfilling these roles. Because every business has 3 major responsibilities. You got to create value, you got to sell the value, and you got to deliver the value. That's it. That's the simplest way of looking at it. I got to create value. I got to develop a solution to meet the needs of somebody, meet their needs, meet their desires, whatever. And that's value. Then I got to sell it somehow, marketing, sales, that kind of thing. And then, of course, I got to deliver the value proposition. That's what every business has to do. So think about that. And then the trees to succeed have to have 7 non-negotiable requirements for growth. And they are seed, which contains the DNA, the business plan, a little bit of initial capital so that the seed can actually break through the soil, put out its little leaves, begin producing its own revenue. It's got to have that, contains everything, it's the vision of what it will be, the plan, everything. It's got to have the soil, which represents the heart and your niche. It's got to have water, which is information. You need to be information hawks. You need to learn. Read. Leaders are readers. You got to learn, which is why I built a school so you could learn and drink pure water. You can still go to the Mississippi River if you want to. That's up to you. It's not my business, but I'm saying there's something better. And so these are the 7 things. You got to have nutrients, which promote the growth of the seed. There's 17 natural nutrients that a tree's got to have. And by the way, they speak of incredibly important things that every business must have. You say, how do I support my business? Well, what are the things I got to have in place? Well, they're represented by the 17 nutrients. They got to have light, which is energy, because the light is what you take light. Now listen carefully. You take light, you take water, and you take CO2. That's what leaves do. And they combine that. Now get the picture. Okay. Sunlight, CO2, and water. Shake it up, and presto, you have wood. Like, how is that possible? It's the process called photosynthesis. We talk about the details of that. Where did the tree get its wood from? When you understand that, you understand how to get the riches and glory into tangible form. It's powerful stuff. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And that's the end of the lesson. But I want to pass on this other thing, because obviously we have a school of business, and I'd like to introduce something to you and tell you something that was a little bit shaking to me, a little bit surprising. About a year ago, I was walking and I asked the Lord, see, when I was doing my consulting, my clients, the minimum was $5,000 a month, sometimes 10,000, some 15,000 a month. These were retainers. And I had multiple clients. And sometimes the retainer would seem like the more they paid, the less they wanted. They just wanted to make sure they could get me on a phone call or whatever. And so I came back one day and I was praying. I said, God, give me, I want a strategy, one of your strategies for like what we used to call, what they still call big ticket things, high ticket stuff. What would be a great package to put together like I used to do? And then I waited on the Lord, which is what I encourage you to do, because when you wait on the Lord, sometimes he's going to show you something you didn't think. And what he said to me was this. He said, son, I didn't give you all this, which I hadn't written those books yet. I didn't give you all that information so that only a few people who could afford the big ticket could have access to it. I want you to make it available widely. And I knew from that I had to write some books. I said, Lord, you don't make money with books. I sold hundreds of thousands of books, but believe me, you don't make money with that. It doesn't work like you might think it does. So if you want to join the school, you're going to find out that I've made it very accessible, but it's going to equip your mind with the intimate knowledge of success factors. It's going to train your soul, give you deal with your mindset, your confidence, fearlessness. It's going to strengthen your spirit. You're going to learn how to walk with God, be led of the Spirit, and enrich your life. Tangible, measurable results. There is inside the school about $5,000 worth of deliverables, dozens of work and business courses, over 300 videos and growing. We got people, bringing more content in, good people that I want to bring in, plus all of my stuff. I've got hundreds of videos in there. I think 400 or something like that right now. Over 100 audio lessons and growing. A growing digital library of books. Most lessons are 10 to 15 minutes, but many are full length, 45 to 60 minutes. I got Peter Daniels, all his books. He gave me permission to put his 12-book library that he wrote that are the best books on goal setting and other kinds of things inside there. If you're a member, you can have access to it, read them, download them, whatever you want to do. So the School of Business has a lot in there. It has live group coaching, and there's two levels, just so you know. Where there's the mastermind level. These are where we have weekly calls. They're Friday at noon Eastern. Mastermind level. And there's a starter level, which are monthly calls instead of weekly. And they're the second Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. And all the calls are recorded and available for review anytime. But if you're in the mastermind group, there is something called the unlimited email support. I've been answering somebody's emails today. You said, help me with the Moses questioning strategy. I need to know how to implement it. And I do. That's what I do. I help them. We all have those moments when you say, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck on something. This is what I got. One of the guys in our mastermind group was asking me this today. How do I implement the Moses questioning strategy? What's the way to do that? So I walked him through some of that process. That's what unlimited email support is about. You can say, here's my sales copy. Here's my sales challenge, whatever it is. Can you give me some input? And we do. So the question is, what's it worth to you? And I don't like these kind of things that tell you, well, this is worth this and that. You know what? It's really in the eye of the beholder. It's up to you. I don't know. I mean, how much is a glass of water worth? It kind of depends, doesn't it? Are you standing by the sink, or are you at the edge of the Sahara and you haven't had a drink in 3 days? I mean, how much is it worth? Kind of depends on a lot. But I will tell you this. There's over $5,000 worth of courses, and that's not an inflated price. That's what people pay. There's thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's growing every month and continuously expanding. Of course, there's the actual coaching and the masterminding and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the real value. The real value is the result that you get from this thing. It's when you get from the results. Now I'm going to stop sharing something because I got to show you something that might come as a bit of a surprise to you. Let me just end this and pop something up here. I had a gentleman in the in our coaching mastermind group 2 weeks ago. He's about 70 years old, a very accomplished, successful career coach, very successful business guy. He joined us and he said, Michael, I decided to do what you told me to do. And I followed your steps and I went out and I made 7 presentations and I got 6 of them to say yes. I'm blown away by how effective this is. And so I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I'm not surprised. I've had people tell me that kind of thing on numerous occasions. But then I asked Eric to share something and to see what he had to say, because he had a story that I wanted to share. And he actually added something I was unfamiliar with. So I'm going to share this with you. Here it is.
I would like you to tell what happened, because you told me the story I didn't even know until you and I were at the Benham's thing in Charlotte. What is your experience?
Yeah, the reality is that when you have water for people who are at the edge of the desert, you have what they need. There is no selling. There's just obedience. I used what I learned from the Rainforest Strategy and from a couple of seminars I heard Michael at when he was doing Selling on Wolves without joining the pack. And I just took those principles and I was like, okay, I need to follow this. Probably the biggest one was the Moses questioning strategy. And I used that at some of the workshops that I was doing. And I would regularly close 85% or more of the room. I had one particular one that was in Burbank, California, at the Marriott right there by the airport. Standing room only, an evening session that was supposed to be for about 25 business owners, wound up being about 40 business owners there. And somewhere close to 33, 34 folks said, hey, I want to get into that coaching program. I literally didn't do any selling. I just asked the questions that Michael taught. I followed the strategy that he was advocating. And I simply said, I'm going to hand out contracts. And if you'd like to sign up, great. And if not, that's fine too. I mean, there was no pitch. There was nothing. It was just following exactly that formula. And I feel like when we honor God's ways, he'll honor us. I don't want to say that, it's hocus pocus and magically you succeed. That's not true. That's not true. But it is true that if we go where the Spirit is and we do the work where the Spirit's doing the work, like Jesus did in John 5, he says, I only work where I see my Father working. You want to learn how to see where God's working? Start learning what Michael is teaching. Start putting it into practice, and you'll start seeing God in places you haven't seen before. And if you're faithful to go there and work with him, I'm going to tell you the results are pretty amazing. That's my experience. I've been in the Jesus School of Business with Michael for 23 years. He just wasn't called that. I was devouring his books and listening to what he taught. In large part, a lot of my career, and Michael probably knows this, the very first time when I stepped out of the door at eMyth and launched my own business, it was within a year or two of that I was speaking at an event that Michael was putting on. Until that time, I had 1 or 2 clients here or there. I really was just on my way to hitting rock bottom. And I went to an event that Michael put on called Taking Back the Gates of Commerce. It effectively launched my business. And I'll tell you what I did. I listened to what he said. And then I got up second. And that one, I got up second. And I tried to just be in the spirit that Michael was in. And I got 80 clients in an hour. I hadn't got 8 clients in a year and a half. Right. I'm just telling you guys, when you do it God's way, part of it is it rips off this lens that we all have, which is the world's way. Marketing is about convincing somebody to buy something for $2 that you produce for $1. Sales is convincing somebody by pressing on the needs and the pain point and bringing them to a decision. ABC, always be closing. Okay, that's all going to get exploded out of your head in the best way when you really dive into this, because what Michael teaches is, hey, there's a reason why that sort of works. But let me tell you the real truth behind what we're really doing here and meeting people's needs. And when we do it that way, not only do you see the right people purchase your product or service, but you see it change their life. You see it change your life. You see it change the lives of your employees. And that's what's going to be that shockwave of changing the culture. I know that sounds like an impossible task. It does. What Jesus said, disciple nations. That sounds impossible. How about start with this? Disciple your calendar. Disciple your customer service. You got 5 customers. Like Michael said, give and give and give and give. Do something extraordinary with 5 customers. It won't be long, because in this climate, what is it like when someone really treats you well and they really go above and beyond? Are you not going to talk about that? You are going to talk about that, because unfortunately anymore, it's rare. So you instantly stand out.
So I just want to continue with this there's all kinds of financial justifications. I'm just letting you know that they're there. But in my opinion, the real question is this: do you want to be an influencer in the marketplace? Do you want to be skillful in God's ways? And do you desire to learn his ways and be enveloped in his wisdom? Do you desire to win in the marketplace over time? It's not an instant thing. It was for him, but not always. And be a witness to the world. And as Paul said, that you always having all sufficiency in all things may have an abundance for every good work. So when I talk about the value, that's up to you. You're adults, you're smart, you know what it's worth to you. You know how it can impact your business. I don't need to spell it out for you. You know whether that's something you want to feed on, drink on. You know whether you're tired of the other stuff, the crap that's out there. You know whether this is actually going to be something or not, and whether you can give your time and your heart and your mind and your emotions to this. Can you put yourself into this? I don't know that, but you do. So here's what this looks like. There's the tuition. It's not thousands of dollars. This is me putting it within reach. The mastermind level is $247 a month, unless you pay for the year, which is $2,475, which saves you, basically gives you 2 months free. It's about $500 savings. So that's good. And you can cancel anytime. But the mastermind level, just so you know, I'm going to compare, these are the 2 levels you can choose. They both give you full access to the Jesus School curriculum, which I'll show you a little bit what that looks like in a second. The mastermind is weekly live group coaching. It's like a mini mastermind. You bring your, hey, Michael, here's my sales piece I'm working on. Here's a letter, or here's a challenge, or I couldn't get past this, whatever it is. We deal with that. It gives you the unlimited email access that I told you about. And it's got access to 150 hours of previously recorded sessions that we've done with PowerPoints, etc., where applicable. That's in the mastermind group. So in addition to all the 400 some odd videos, whatever it is, in the Jesus School, there's another 150 hours back here. The starter level, which actually most people do, and that's fine. It's whatever's right for you. And maybe none of them are right. That's okay too. Because this isn't going to change my life, but it will change yours if it's right for you. So you need to pray about this. But it's $97 a month, cancel anytime. And a number of people say, you know what, if I'm going to do that, I might as well pay the $970 per year. And that way I can save 2 months, or basically about $200. And the only difference is you're going to get monthly live group coaching. And instead of having the mastermind access, you're going to have access to the previous Jesus School monthly meetings, the recordings. There's 8 of them right now. So it's about probably 12 hours worth of teaching that's in there right now. So it's a smaller level, smaller commitment. It's good. And if you choose to get in and get involved, and by the way, I want you to understand something. There's no pressure. I hate that. I hate it. So here's the thing. You don't have to get this today. You probably want to, some of you, and you should if it's right for you. But I think if it was me, I want to talk to my wife. We'd like to be in agreement on something. Maybe I want to pray about it, right? So that's fine. So what we've done is we said, going to have until next Tuesday. That's a week or 6 days now, to make a $97 decision or $247 decision. That's like lots of time. And so there's no pressure. You got that time to say, if I want to get in, because we have a special offer here. When you get in, regardless of which of the 2 plans you pick, you're going to have, first thing that's going to happen is you're going to receive these 4 books in the mail, physical books. Secondly, some of you already got them, but you'll have another set. Secondly, you're also going to get the digital version of those books. Thirdly, you're going to get the digital version of Selling Among Wolves and 7 Secrets of the Sale, which are profound. That's bonus number 1. Bonus number 2 is a little different from that, and I got to share this with you. It has to do with the flagship program that Eric put together. And so I said, Eric, this is your thing. He agreed to put together. I asked him to contribute something for this, for everybody on the call. So he's putting this on the table, and it's available for anybody who says, hey, I want to get into school, and you got, a few days to do it, a week almost. And if you get in, the second bonus is this flagship program. And he explains this, and it's very important. So I want you to hear what he's got to say on that regard.
Absolutely. Well, it's what we've been talking about all night. A lot of people feel like I just need to understand, where am I right now? Where am I at? And just getting oriented. We can see that everything that is systemized well has a solid orientation, but then I need to understand, where am I going? So where am I and where am I going? Really bridging the gap between those two is this flagship tool. It treats you like the captain of your ship, and it's going to give you an accurate map for what needs to be systemized, made scalable in your business or in your career over the next 12 months. If you want to see a significant transformation in how you do business, how you approach what you're doing, what you need is a roadmap to follow, and you need it broken down. This month we do this, this month we do this, this month we do this. But it's not just informational. It is a method. And the method is in the system. There's a 30-minute coaching video that you get at the end of the assessment. So you answer questions. They're very simple yes, no questions, but they're quite juicy though. And it's going to go through all 12 areas of business. At the end of that, it's going to show you exactly where you're strong, but why, and exactly where you're maybe needing to improve, but why. But then the most important part of it is the half an hour of coaching through each of those sections about what to do, the method, taking the results. How do I take these results and turn this into action? That's what the flagship teaches you, is not just what needs to get done, but how to get it done. And I think it sets everybody up for really knowing, all right, moving forward in this next year, how is next year going to be different than this year? Guys, it only takes you about 30 minutes to take it. And it could be one of the most important 30 minutes that you spend this year, because it's going to allow you to really get things lined up. And we know what happens when there's alignment, there's power. And when there's power, there's the fruit. And then there's the change that we're all talking about. So I thought that would be a great thing to give you guys access to, so that you can go, hey, I know what to do. I even know how to do it. And I've got it all laid out for me.
Right. And then while I show the next slide real quick, because it also includes the financial radar.
Yeah.
Comment about that?
Yeah. So this is a module for my coaching program, Financial Radar. Everything that we do in the coaching program is systems. This is a system building template, and it allows you to ask and answer the most 20 important financial questions every single month. Not like an accountant, and not for taxes, not bookkeeping, but as a decision maker. What are the 20 most important financial questions I need to ask and answer every single month to make sure, in the flagship analogy, the financial radar, that's the crow's nest. That's that bucket at the very top of the mast. What does it allow you to do? To see forward and understand what's happening, and to look backwards and to understand the trend and the pattern, and to learn from what's happened. Financial radar is probably one of the most important systems that we teach, but it's often neglected, because what you're going to get is P&L statements, or how to make a loan, or how to, bookkeep, or do payroll, or get ready for taxes. That's all super important. It is, but it's not in the format of decision-making and actionable, unless you want to be an accountant, or unless you already are. If you're not that, and you really want to know, what do the best business owners in the world, what are the questions they ask about money? It's in Financial Radar.
Right. And then lastly, the fourth bonus, Wally, is eliminating time debt. And what would you say about that, Eric?
Well, we touched on it earlier. It is a stronghold, guys. Believing that there's more to do than time to do it is a lie. And it's a lie from the pit of hell. And it is designed to destroy your life. And it is destroying many people's lives. But when we focus, like that stream of water we were talking about before, like the sunlight with the magnifying glass, then all of a sudden things change. Time debt is really understanding, or this module helps you understand what it is, why we believe it, and then how to systematically get out of it. And here's the thing, guys, people teach great techniques all the time. Have you ever heard of somebody teaching you a technique and they say, look, it's going to work, but when it falls apart, it'll work again? That's this one. That's this one. This is not like an idea and I learn it and Shazam, I got it, and it's handled forever. Man, dealing with time, if anyone tells you that they can teach you to manage time like that, they're not telling you the right thing, okay? Dealing with time is tough. So this tool is awesome because it gets you out of the ditch. But if you get back in the ditch, as we all do, I've been teaching it for 20 years. I still use this system occasionally to go, hey, I'm getting overwhelmed. I'll launch a new company, launch a new product, launch a new software or something, and the water comes up and you're really starting to drown. It's like, okay, I got to do this technique. It's a really awesome one. It's pretty simple, but quite powerful. And again, I think it makes you feel like, hey, I'm back in control. I'm accountable. I'm focused, and I'm really bringing a return on this investment of time that I've been given. Because let's just be honest, we don't know how much time we have left, do we? We don't. We don't. And every time you experience a last time, that's a moment where you wish you would have known it was the last time. The last time you talked to your parents, the last time you talked to a friend, the last time you did something, right? And you look back 15 years later and go, man, I haven't done that in forever. Being focused on time in that way and seeing God's view of time really is a freeing process. It's not the time debt that the world has given us. And this will help you get out of it. And I love that Winston Churchill quote. Occasionally look at the results, and that's what we got to do. It's not supposed to be a yoke of slavery. It's supposed to be a burden that's light and a yoke that's easy. And this will help you get there.
Now, one thing I didn't have a chance to show you, this is the Jesus School of Business. And Eric's loading up one of his courses in here now. They'll be in there this week. Here's the Peter J. Daniels library of his 12 books. And there's dozens of courses in here. And when you click on one, once you're enrolled in the school, you'll have access to, and I just picked the Genesis because I talked about it, and you open it up and, pick a day, whatever day is of interest to you, and say, okay, I don't know, I like them all. So I'll just pick day 3 or this particular lesson, God's wisdom in 2 places. There's a video, there's a resource. It'll be a PowerPoint presentation, a detailed thing. There's 11 lessons in this particular one. So this is what it looks like inside the school. And as I mentioned, there's dozens of courses that are here. They're biblically based, biblically derived, and also from the lessons of nature. And we are adding new content every single month. There's nothing like this that I know of anywhere on the planet. So I want to say, this is kind of a differential thing that's not typical. I wanted you to know what's there. And lastly, there is a link. I think Judy has put it in there. I'm not positive, but we'll see. If you're saying, hey, how do I get this? As I got emails last night saying, didn't show up on my screen. It's on the bottom of the screen right now. You can go to michaelpink.com/join. Couldn't make it any easier than that. And if you happen to choose to get in the mastermind level, which will be a smaller group because it's more intense, it's more involved, it's every week, it's people that are active in the marketplace in a big way. If you choose to do that, you'll be in our Friday class, which is in 2 days from now. So 48 hours from now, you'll be on that class if you want to be. And then if you're on the Jesus School, the next one it's always on the second Thursday of the month in the afternoon, about 3 p.m. And so if you're in the starter level, where you're just doing once a month, that's when it is, the second Thursday of the month. We may change that to 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I want to accommodate, make sure my friend Dave from Finland can get in if he wants to be there. But I try to accommodate as many people as possible. That's it, my friends. We have hundreds of students. I want you to be at peace. Go with the peace of God on this thing. That's the big thing to me, is go with that. Thursday night, we're going to be back with Eric Beck. And we're going to be doing some great stuff on Solomon's 5 big wealth secrets, that kind of thing.
And then he wants to know, how do I upgrade to mastermind?
Yeah.
Not switch from scattered.
Tremaine, if you're ready to do that, what we'll do is we'll cancel your Jesus School, and we'll just enlist you in the mastermind group. It'll be pretty straightforward. Yeah. So email us and say I'm ready to do that. We'll walk through the process with you. It'll be easy. And by the way, at any time somebody's in the mastermind and they think, okay, now I want to put this down to monthly, you can downsize, or you can do like Tremaine and say, I want to upsize it. I want to, go to the weekly. So you can do that as well. I hope to see all of you inside the school. I know it's not right for everybody. By the way, if what you want is the workbook, make sure you go to michaelpink.com/workbook, because maybe for some of you, that's all you want. It's like all the slides that I showed, all of that, and for today, and also for tomorrow's session, and maybe that satisfies it for you. That's fine. Or maybe what you want is, I want that, and I want to get those books, the God's Best Kept Secrets, which has 101 of my strategies, of what I learned from God, his best kept secrets, I call them. It's a 4-volume set. You can go to michaelpink.com. You'll see where to get it. It's very easy if you just want to get the books. So that's it, friends. God love you. I love you. My wife loves you, and I love her too. So thank you very much. I hope I'm not missing anything. If you have any technical issues, email Wally at michaelpink.com. You got anything nice to say, email Michael at michaelpink.com. All right. That's it, guys. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. And for those who can't make that time, we'll be doing it again Friday. God bless you, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.